Good afternoon, Seema, and good afternoon to all my viewers at ACadru. Today we have with us Seema, an eminent storyteller, a storytelling coach, and also an education consultant. Apart from many workshops and storytelling sessions that she has done both domestically in the country and internationally, she is also a director at Storytelling Education and Arts India Council, a not for profit organization. She is the founder of Traveling Bards, a founding member of Delhi Storytellers Tribe, and the Gatha Company. So, welcome, Seema. It's great to have you here. And I hope that we have an interesting conversation in terms of understanding how your journey has been, and it would be an inspiration for our viewers here at ACadru.
Thank you, Abhishek. I'm really happy to be here and I hope to share as much as I can in this given time.
Brilliant. So I think one of the normal question that I typically ask and start off with is to understand your own journey, typically with a focus on how storytelling per se started and how you kind of excelled and grew in that chosen vocation of yours. So maybe you could talk a little bit about it.
Okay, so first of all, I was not aware of storytelling as a field till around 2006. But having said that, naturally, I've done my master's in literature. So stories and even before that in school, reading has been a part of my life. So so I think the journey doesn't begin with a course or a particular thing. It is a journey of your life, which is more like a river, which meanders and it takes you to another course from one to another. So for
Certainly.
me, even before I started my journey in storytelling, prior to that, I was actually designing and manufacturing toys.
Mm.
Uh, and these toys were used by schools as educational aids. And when we took these, specially puppets, to schools, they said that, why don't you have stories with these? Now, at that particular time, my son, the older one, was around 2.5, 3 years old, and I was using those puppets to tell stories. So those stories I and my husband captured down on paper, and we came up with a story puppet kit. So even before storytelling, which is oral storytelling, I came into, it was like written storytelling and
Certainly.
storytelling aimed at education space.
Mm.
Then when there was a time when I became very interested in education, and I did a course in education leadership, a postgraduate course from iDiscovery. At that point of time, I happened to meet Shaji, who is from Jodo Gyan. And Jodo Gyan utilizes the power of stories to teach mathematics and make mathematics concepts easier for children. I was very intrigued by that. And it was there I learned that storytelling is a specialized field. I was introduced to Kathy Spagnoli. I attended her workshop. And all of this is courtesy Jodogyan and Shachi, that my journey began into storytelling. Now, I did not see myself as a performance storyteller. Honestly, I couldn't see myself standing in on a stage and narrating a story to so many people and all of them listening to me. But I did find that storytelling was a very useful tool when I was doing trainings for teachers. Also, when I was developing curriculum, I thought it would be best to teach through stories. And in the stories, initially I started with early childhood, for early childhood education. And then slowly, as I grew more confident, I understood it could be done for primary school, then secondary school, and even in college for graduate as well as postgraduate courses. So more in learning and development field. And while doing this, while picking up skills, along the way, observation, practice, I would say, reflection, a lot of it, what worked, what didn't work, how can I be better? I was called to perform at certain festivals, which was a stage kind of storytelling, and I enjoyed it immensely. So I also do performance storytelling.
It's been a varied journey, and you did mention that storytelling as a skill finds application across a variety of fields. I mean, of course, teaching kids is one area, but in training spaces, and I can tell you from my own experience as a strategist and a mergers and acquisition professional, that when we would try to sell companies or buy companies, we would dabble more in stories in terms of what we have done and how is it that an organization is impacting the lives of people and stakeholders around it. And that's the story which kind of gets the job done, not the underlying data. Of course, data is important, but it's the story behind it which galvanizes people to action. So I do understand and empathize with what you are saying, and I think it's a very, very relevant skill to have. Uh, and so just to kind of move this forward, and I think you did talk about how the progression of storytelling skills happen, and you talked about observation per se, and then you talked about performance. But if you were to kind of break this larger skill set into smaller pieces, as to what would those skills be, and how could potentially be acquired through a person's lifetime? I mean, if you could throw some light on it, that would be very
Okay. All right. So first of all, I would like to say that storytelling is not just a skill. Storytelling is an art. It's a skill, and there is science behind it.
helpful.
So the science is how, see, human brains are wired to understand and listen to stories.
That's
If you
true.
don't have a story, the brain will cook up one. Okay, so even when you begin the process of developing skills in a storytelling, I think even before that, it is important that why do you want to become a storyteller? What does it mean to you? Because you need to have your own why, first of all. Okay, once you have your why, then it is what kind of stories appeal to you. So I'm going to give you different things which you need to consider. So
Sure.
what kind of stories appeal to you? Why do they appeal to you? Okay, where do you see yourself, in which character? What is it that character is trying to convey? Do you see the characters fleshed out? Okay, and so I would say this is one part of the story, the why of your wanting to become a storyteller. Second, the kind of stories you want to tell. Then the third, which is the audience you're comfortable with. So is it children? Is it adults? It is young adults? Is it senior citizens? So your audience. Okay. Now I would say that your audience could also be your existing organization you're working in. You just add a skill set of storytelling, okay, which would help you in your journey, in your work, professional work. Now, when you are learning the skills, now, apart from these whys and what you want to do and the W's related to it, I would say that then there are certain skills you need. One is, how are you going to structure your story? What is going to be your beginning, ending? How will you present it? How much to say? What not to say and yet make it understood? Okay. Now for this, okay, what is also important is another set of skills, which is your voice modulation, your facial expressions, your eye contact, the body language, okay, the confidence which you exude when you are telling a story, and that will stem from your belief in the story, because if you don't believe in it, you can't fake it. People will see through you. So these things. Then one very important thing which many of us need to be reminded is the power of pause. So where to
We seem
pause,
to have
for how
forgotten.
much?
We seem to have forgotten that
Yeah.
sometimes silence is golden and brevity is the
Yes.
soul of it.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry for interrupting. I just could observe. Just stop observing. Yeah, please go ahead.
So I would say that a mix of all these with a clear why would help anyone. Now, you also have to know, where are you telling a story? If you're doing a performance storyteller on a stage, okay, you're what do I say? You would be maybe more dramatic. Okay. But if you are telling a story in a corporate world, in a business meeting, you are not going to, stand up and start moving like that. You have to tell it in a different manner. So you should know where you are telling a story, what is the purpose. And so I think that is very important.
No, this makes a lot of sense to me. And from the way it's coming out to me, it looks like that storytelling, more than ever before, is finding application across a variety of career choices, a variety of application across different pieces of a person's own personal as well as professional life. Um, would you like to kind of throw some light on it in terms of what possible careers could storytelling find application and use in, either from a today's perspective or from a future perspective?
Yeah, okay, sure. So to begin with, okay, even before moving to careers, let me tell you that there is oral storytelling,
Right.
okay, there is visual storytelling, and
Mm.
visual storytelling is something which is also, oral storytelling is one of the oldest form of storytelling. That's how we communicated to each other when we did not have a written language. Or visual
Absolutely.
storytelling, if I go back, I would say the cave paintings, which convey the story of lives of people. And now it is pictures, images, doodling, paintings, which it comes through. So visual storytelling. Okay. Third one is written storytelling, which is you write a story, and the applications are many. It could be articles, it could be newspapers, you could, whatever is a written format, you can become an author. So that's again a form. So I'm taking storytelling in a very broad generic view of it. Then you have performance storytelling. Okay, in performance storytelling, it could be that you choose to be an oral storyteller. It's an oral performance, or you could choose different mediums. You, as a performer, might align yourself to a dying art in the country. Like there is a covered, katha, and there is a storyteller I know. His name is Akshay Gandhi. He has picked it up, he has mastered it, and he tells stories using that cover. So so you could
Interesting.
align yourself to a traditional form of storytelling, learn that, and make sure that it goes forward. Okay,
Mm.
so in performance spaces also, if you look at dance, it is a form of storytelling. Your dance tells a story. If you look at theater, it is telling you a story. Now this is performance. If you look at any movie which you see, it is telling you a story. Okay, so so these all come under performance for me. Then you have storytelling in digital space. Okay, so digital space also includes the movies and the serials and everything. It also includes social media and social media marketing. Okay, what is the branding which is happening through it? Now it also includes, if you're saying digital space, what are the posts you're putting out on your Insta, on your Facebook, and whatever, like different platforms, because all that is telling your story continuously. A lot of times for young, if there's young audience out there, many employers actually go through these pages to understand who you are as a person. So you may say or want to present yourself in a different light, but your social media is telling another story about you. So so you have to be very mindful of all these things.
Yeah, it seems to me that the right question to have asked would be that which all areas storytelling doesn't find application in. Because it
No, no,
seems
no. I'll move forward with it. Okay, so this is just a broader picture
no,
I was
but
trying to give you.
no, but I'm very impressed in terms of thinking through the skill and how one should acquire it at a young age so that it could
Yeah,
find application and manifestation across different careers that we choose to take. I mean, even if we don't pursue storytelling per se as a career,
yeah.
this is definitely a very salient and a very important skill. Please go ahead, Seema.
So I would say that for anyone who's listening, first reason to acquire the skill of storytelling is a personal reason. Okay, it's self. Everything begins with self. It's your journey. Okay, all the time you're presenting yourself to the world. Okay, when you apply for your college application, tells a story about you.
Right.
Okay, when you go for a job interview, It tells a story about you. And the skills of storytelling, eye contact, confidence, being able to present your things in a lucid, logical manner, which would actually capture the imagination of someone, is a very important skill. So that's one skill. Now, storytelling finds its way in the business medium. So you have the organizational story. What is it? Which story, or what is one is a startup, okay, story. Then you have image management, okay. Then you have brand story. You have marketing of that, different brands, what story each one tells. Okay, so you have very different, you can join advertising field as a storyteller, because that is also trying to tell you a story. When you look at an ad of maybe a chips or a Pepsi, or maybe I would say that for someone like me, I look at an ad which shows me a hair color and tells me that I would look better if I color my hair, because it would make me, so it is also telling me a story. It is a negative story. It's telling me I'm not good enough being me. I should look younger. So do I want to buy that story is up to me, but many people buy that story, and that's how you buy products. So that is also a way of storytelling in an organization. HR tells, and I don't mean stories are rooted in untruth. Story has to be rooted in truth. So suppose an HR has to communicate the values of a company to someone, rather than telling them that, integrity, discipline, okay, give all these. Instead, tell a story of an employee or senior management or a junior employee, whoever, who is an example of that particular story. You convey much more, because people will connect to that and remember that story, but they may not remember your PPT in which you said these are the values you need to adhere to. So that's one part, because in business world, I mean I can go on about it, but let's move to the another stream. Tourism. Okay, you see the when you have the tourism industry, there are two things about it. One is when you want people to come and visit. It could be your country, it could be your state. So what story are you putting out about your culture, about your place, that people should come and visit it? Okay, that is storytelling. Second is something which commonly we see whenever we go to a monument or any place. We have these tourist guides who come and tell us stories about that place.
Right.
Now, suppose there was someone who had done a lot of research on that place and put together a story in a very lucid manner, and told that and narrated it about that particular place, a temple, a monument, a mosque, whichever it is, of significance to someone. Wouldn't it be enchanting to listen to it?
Certainly be.
So tourism, okay, is one place where storytellers can actually make a difference. Museums, because museums have artifacts, and each artifact, everything tells a story of that time and place. Okay, coming to education. Okay, education sector is very vast. Now, if you see school, or the part of it which is schooling, okay, from pre-nursery to post-graduation, you have very different niche audience and different types of stories you would tell. It could be stories for values, it could be stories for concept, which can be made very clear through a story. Okay, it could be, and as children grow up, it would be stories related to science or social studies, or stories which will connect everything together. Maths in form of a story. Okay, wouldn't it be fun? So
rather very interesting.
Yeah. So it could be, so education, the story is very, very relevant to education domain. Now come to learning and development, training, coaching, mentoring. Storytelling is a very important skill there. Okay. Now come to influencing. Okay, the people who are called motivational speakers or influencers. If you ever listen to a speech, the speech which really touches you, most of them start with a personal story. Okay, so the examples of people which touch us, they are stories, and that is a skill to have. how to influence through stories as a part of your speech. Now, science, okay, NASA employs storytellers.
I wasn't aware of that.
And I would like to share that I go into storytelling at Nehru Planetarium,
Okay.
because there would be a concept which would be more of an abstract, or more sounds very difficult when the definition is given, but when you tell it in form of a story, have an activity built around it, get children to do something, they remember it much more. So I do storytelling at Nehru Planetarium.
Oh, fantastic. It's as if that rocket science becomes much more approachable once you use
Absolutely.
stories.
Absolutely.
I think
Then
a
you
lot
can
of,
always,
sorry,
sorry,
no,
sorry.
please go ahead. I mean, I was just trying to think that
Yeah,
we do talk about these critical 21st century skills.
yeah,
I think there is a lot of talk around critical thinking, complex problem solving. But I think storytelling, to my mind, should be a very, very integral and an important 21st century skill. Because it certainly allows us to connect with different vocations that all of us have around us. And it becomes a part of pretty much each and every career, every vocation that we do. And we can do it much more efficiently and effectively if we use stories as opposed to banal data centric perhaps, but non-storied ways of communicating or building upon through. So this is very, very interesting. I would like to hear more, Seema. Please go ahead. What are the other
no,
applications you think are there where stories would find application?
yeah. So you mentioned 21st century skills, okay? We keep on telling children and adults and young adults to think out of the box,
Right.
okay? What is thinking out of the box? Why don't we tell them Akbar Birbal stories? Isn't that actually a perfect example of thinking out of the box, thinking differently, finding a solution?
Yes,
So
problem solving. Yeah.
problem
Why not?
solving, critical thinking, creative thinking, all of it comes in that. So if you see
Absolutely.
Tenali Raman stories, we have so many. We have a rich cultural heritage of these stories, which
Seema, this gets me to a very interesting question, and I wondered about it oftentimes. If I take a youngster, let's say a 15, 20-year-old,
yeah,
uh, how do you think a person like that, who has listened to many stories, maybe from his or her grandparents, watched movies, and in general glued onto the stories around himself or herself, how can he or she develop storytelling as a skill? I mean, you did mention great observation is critical. Wanting to tell a story is very, very important. But for a 15, 20-year-old, how does that self-awareness get built? How does that proactivity comes in? And how one could potentially make a start to understand and master this skill in some way?
okay. So I would say first, listen to a lot of stories.
Absolutely.
Second, read a lot of stories. Okay, want to tell them. Third, I think if you have seen these Gold Coast and if you watch TED Talks, okay. So if I'm talking about observation, and if the person is wanting to become a motivational speaker, I'm talking about that, or presenting themselves, these are very useful. Now, it depends what the person wants to use it for. Okay. If I were to work with youngsters, okay, if they want to become storytellers, I would begin with the first thing, that what is your story? Okay. And help them look within themselves who they are through that story. Now, the story could be a metaphor, it may not be a direct story. Okay, so metaphorical stories are those in which you may not be you, but you're telling it through some kind of a situation which something else faces. So you can actually help them
Correct.
bring out themselves first. That is what I would do if I were to guide youngsters in how to become a storyteller. Pull out storytelling stories from their own lives. So what are the stories? Some incident which has happened. Okay.
Some
Suppose
kind of
you
a
climbed a tree.
self-discovery in some form.
Self-discovery, of overcoming some obstacle, putting it down in form of a story or in form of a narration basically, and then looking at it that how do I tell it so that it is one, logical to listen to, second, engaging for the other person. Okay, how will I tell the story? How would I structure it to tell? Third, curiosity is maintained, and when something, when it is getting over, there's an aha feeling to it. I would do this kind of thing. Also, it also depends on the other person. Now, there are youngsters, okay, many of them, who enjoy ghost stories, okay,
Okay.
horror stories, okay, some of them like inspirational stories, some like adventure, So you have to know what is the hook in that particular person that they would get, want to come into or read a story, and second, tell a story. So I think it's a very, you need to work with someone to understand that. Apart from that, obviously the skills which I mentioned, voice modulation, eye contact, facial expressions, body language, confidence. If you're thinking of a performance story on a stage, then how do you walk up to a stage? How do you fill that space?
Mm.
And the power of pause.
This is very, very useful. And I think you've given so much to chew upon. I'm still trying to process it in some meaningful manner. Uh, but one thing is very, very clear in my head, that when I think of storytelling or storytelling set of skills, it's not just one skill, but many skills. And I think wanting to tell a story is probably the first and the most
Yeah,
important precondition to be
yeah.
able to develop that skill. Mm. I'm being mindful of time here as well, which is probably about 5 minutes.
Okay.
But
Yes.
any broad advice to youngsters or adults, if they want to go on this journey, what special thing they could do? Any courses people could look at? I've heard this thing about story arcs and narrative development, storyboarding and mood boarding. Do you think things like that help? And kind of how could one develop this in a slightly more formalized, rigorous environment as opposed to an informal environment, which we obviously do that on our own or maybe with some amount of mentoring?
Okay. So, how one first question, I mean, there are two parts to your question. So first is that to understanding of story arc, storyboarding. Okay, does it help? Of course it helps. Okay, it does help. uh, a lot of schools actually have writing stories or writing different types of stories as a part of their module. Okay, it is given like you have to write a short story or you have to write something, so that helps you while writing. While for oral narration, not much importance is given.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are quite a few storytellers which who are actually training online now
Mm.
in nowadays time. So one could actually take coaching for those who love to research, because nowadays self-learning modules are available. So you can actually sign up for a particular module and learn storytelling. I read certain articles on ACadru platform, and that actually I was very impressed with. I must admit, and I shared some of them. Like I told my friends that they must read it, and I would say storytellers must read it too. So, so they could learn more about what are the applications of storytelling, see the entire field from different eyes, and then choose for themselves what they would do. I would say that. And see, you have different ways to get into something. One is plan, practice, reflect, do again. So that, the the experience, reflection, doing that kind of a cycle, or you learn formally
Mm.
from someone. So I would say it's up to the person to choose what exactly they want. Even when you do public speaking, you learn many elements of storytelling in it. So there are many courses on that as well. If someone wants to learn one-on-one or in a group, second thing is online, okay, enroll for a course and learn. Third thing is read up and learn. It depends upon who wants to learn which way.
Absolutely. It does make a lot of sense. In fact, when we were developing those storytelling related modules on ACadru, I think we realized that it was difficult to compress this entire learning into few modules. So we did cover some interesting topics. For example, myth and how mythology has developed. We talked about database storytelling and
Yes.
talked about digital storytelling. And there are a
Yes.
few more which would be appealing to different kind
Yeah.
of learners. And thank you for mentioning that. We would definitely like more people to come and explore this. But fundamentally, I think it's a very interesting observation in terms of thinking through storytelling skills and thinking it from a long-term perspective. This is a broad bucket of skills and would certainly be useful for careers today and tomorrow. And it's not for anything, it's just fun, and we should definitely do that. Thank you so much, Seema, for being here and talking to our listeners and viewers. It's wonderful having you here. And we would certainly get back to you if we have a few more questions that would come our way.
Sure.
It would be very nice if you could answer some of them. Thank you
Thank you.
so much again. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. My pleasure being here.
Bye bye.
I mean, it was amazing.